So today we're going to talk about solving quadratic equations by factoring. Okay, there are multiple ways we can solve it. The first thing you have to do when you're solving by quadratic equations by factoring, or by any method in that case, is we need to write them in standard form. Standard form is ax squared plus bx plus c. Okay, a, b, and c are just your coefficients, so we need to make sure we have those. I'm going to show you two ways to do it. One's going to be called the area method. I call it the X method. The other one's going to be grouping. So the first way I'm going to show you is, let's consider this problem here. Okay, we need to make sure that this 3c is going to go onto the other side. So we're going to have our 2c squared minus 3c minus 9. And now we're going to set it equal to 0. So we got to make sure everything's in their order. This 2 here, that's going to be your A coefficient. The negative 3 is your B coefficient. And the negative 9 here is your C coefficient. That's what I refer to when I'm going A, B, and C. Okay, to do the area method, you're going to have to draw yourself an X like so. So we're going to draw an X like this. And the top of the X is always A times C, so that's our two, we're talking about our physical numbers. So A in this case is 2, C is negative 9, so we're going to multiply 2 times negative 9. That gives me negative 18. And the bottom of this X, we're going to put a B, and what number we're going to put there is our B coefficient, which in this case is negative 3. And what we're looking for on the sides, we're looking for numbers that multiply to get negative 18, but add to get negative 3. So we're looking for our factors of negative 18 that add to get negative 3. Okay, and the two that come to mind here for me are negative 6 and 3. When I add those together, I do get negative 3, so that works. Those numbers are going to be written on the sides of my box, or my X, I should say. So now what we're going to do with each one of those numbers, we're going to take those numbers that we just came up with, and we're going to bring them down, and we're going to write them as the denominator of my fractions. In the top of each fraction, we were going to take the A value and put it in place. So there's going to be my numerator. So I'm going to have a numerator here of 2 and a numerator here of 2. The letter that we are dealing with in our equation is C, so we're going to put a C next to each one of those. Now, after we do this, we're going to go ahead and reduce each one of our fractions if we can. So this fraction here reduces to 1C over negative 3. This fraction does not reduce at all. We get 2c over 3. So now what those do, these are now going to be our factors, these two things here. So let's write our first one. It says 1c over negative 3. So how we write that in a factored form is we just put 1c minus 3. Then we're going to do the same thing for this one. This one we're going to write as 2c plus 3. And of course, when we do it, it's going to be equal to 0. Now, when you're solving any type of quadratic, and I'm going to solve this one since it's set up for me. Okay, you're going to take each set of parentheses. So we're going to take this 1c minus 3, and we're going to set it equal to 0. And then we're going to take this 2c plus 3 and set it equal to 0. So now we're going to sit here and solve each one out. So this one, we're going to add 3 to both sides, add 3 to both sides. So this one I get c is equal to 3. That's one answer. The other answer, we're going to subtract 3 from both sides. We get 2c equals negative 3. Divide both sides by 2. And we get c is equal to negative 3 over 2. With quadratics, you should always get 2 answers. Always should get 2 answers. Okay? The second method that there is called grouping. So I'm going to take that same polynomial that I had before, that same quadratic. This time we're going to group. And again, we're still going to do our A times C. So again, A in this case is this 2. So remember, this is A, this is C. So A is 2, C is negative 9, so that's going to give me negative 18. we still need to find the factors of a that add to equal our b value here. And again, we know that that's -3 and 6. So what we're going to do is we're going to take this b value and we're going to split it up. And we're going to write both of these in place. Okay? So I'm going to put the 6 here and the -3 here. The 2c squared just comes down. -9 comes down. Once you do that, you're going to group the first and the second term together, and then you're going to group those two together, the third and fourth. Okay, in each group, you need to factor out the GCF. So looking here, looking at our numbers, we know a 2 goes into both 2 and 6, so we're going to factor out a 2. They also have to both have one C in common, so we're going to take that out as well. So when I do that, 2 divided by 2 leaves me with 1 in there. C squared, take away 1c, is going to leave me with 1 there. Okay, on this one, we're going to have 6 divided by 2, which leaves me with 3, and since we took a c away, there's no c's left. Then we're going to do the same thing with the blue set of parentheses. So they both have -3 in common, so we're going to factor out that -3. When I do that, -3 divided by -3 is leaving me with 1c. -9 divided by -3 is going to leave me with +3. And you notice that now you have 2 of the same parentheses. Both set of parentheses are the same. That should be the case, so that means that you're going to write that down one time. Whatever's left over, and in this case what's left over is this 2c and this -3. That's going to be your other set of parentheses, 2c minus 3. We're going to set them equal to 0, and then again you would split them each off. And I realized I just made a mistake. This up here should have been -6 and +3. I just realized I made that mistake. There should be a negative and this should be a positive, which does change things. That makes this actually a +3, and both of the stuff inside here and here would be negatives, which makes this a positive and makes that a negative. Let's do another example. I'm going to do everything from the X method from here on out. So again, if you want to do grouping, you can. Just go back and watch how I did grouping on the first slide. Okay, so again, we need to move everything to the left. So this -5x squared is going to come over here. So we're going to have 5x squared plus 11x plus 2 equals 0. Okay, so in the X method, remember, this is A, B, and C. Okay, so we're going to draw ourselves an X. Remember, the top is always A times C, which in this case is going to be 5 times 2. That's going to give me an answer of 10. And the bottom, remember, is always your B value, which in this case is going to be 11. So we need to find two numbers that multiply to get 10 but add to get 11. Those two numbers would be, in this case, 10 and 1. We're going to take each one of those numbers and write them as a denominator of a fraction. Remember, the number that goes up top is going to be, on both of them, your A, which in this case is 5. The letter that is used in the problem in this case is X. From here, we need to reduce it if we can. So this does reduce. 5 goes into both 5 and 10. So we're going to have x over 2. 5x over 1 does not reduce those, so we're going to leave it as it is. So our factors in this case, this goes to x plus 2, and then 5x plus 1. Okay, now that they're both set equal to, now we got to set both of them equal to 0. So we have x plus 2 equals 0. And then 5x plus 1 equals 0. So we're going to subtract 2 from both sides. So in this case, x is going to equal -2. And then on this one, We're going to subtract 1 from both sides. So we get 5x equals negative 1. Divide by 5, divide by 5. So x will equal negative 1 over 5. Yeah, let's do another one. Now in this case, it says let u squared equal x 36x squared. So to get u, we're going to take the square root of both of these. So we're going to have u equals, the square root of 36 is 6, the square root of x squared is going to be x. And the reason we're doing that is if you look at these numbers, they're going to give you rather large numbers. So we just substitute u in place of them. And since we know u is 6x, to get 60x, that means we're taking that u and multiplying it by 10. So we know that for 60x, it's going to be 10u. So our new quadratic equation is going to be u squared plus 10u plus 21 equals 0. And now we can go ahead and solve these. Okay, we're going to do x method again. Again, it's a times c. A in this case is 1, so it's going to be 1 times 21, which is just 21. Our b goes in the bottom. Our b in this case is 10. Remember, it's the middle one. So the two sides, again, it's two numbers that multiply to get 21, but add to get 10. That's going to be 7 and 3. So we're going to write those as the denominators of our fractions. The numerator of our fractions is just simply going to be u, because that's our a value in this case. We can't reduce any fractions, so our two factors will be u plus 7 and u plus 3. We're going to set them both equal to 0, so u plus 7 equals 0, u plus 3 equals 0. Solve each one. So we know in this case, u is going to be negative 7 or negative 3. Okay, but that's not what it was asking us to find. It told us to solve for x here. But the cool thing is we know u, remember from the very, very top up here, is 6x. So that means I can take that and put 6x in place of u. So we know 6x is going to equal negative 7. We also know 6x is going to equal negative 3. Divide by 6 on both sides. So we know in this case, x is equal to negative 7 over 6. And then in this case, divide by 6. That reduces, so x could also equal negative 1/2. Remember, you should always get two answers for these. Okay, we got a couple more to go over with you, and then we'll be finished. All right, so this one's already set up for us. So what we're going to do, we're going to take this 25x squared, and we're going to name that as u squared. We know u squared is going to be 25x squared. Therefore, by taking the square root of that, we know that u is going to be 5x. The square root of 25 is 5, and the square root of x squared is x. Okay. To find our b value is 15x. Well, what did they multiply to get that 15x? They multiplied it by 3, so we know 3u is going to be 15x. So we got our new formula of u squared plus 3u minus 18 equals 0. So let's go ahead and do this. We know the top one is going to be a times c, so 1 times negative 18, which is negative 18. The bottom is positive 3. So we need two numbers that multiply to get negative 18, but add to get positive 3. So that's going to be 6 and negative 3. So remember, we're going to take each one of these and write it as the denominator of a fraction. Okay, our a value in this case is u, or 1u. So we know we're going to have u plus 6 and u minus 3 equals 0. Solve each one out. So u plus 6 equals 0, u minus 3 equals 0. So subtract 6. So we know u is equal to negative 6. Add 3. So we know u is also equal to 3. And remember, from the beginning, we know that u is equal to 5x, so I can replace all the u's with 5x. So I have 5x equals negative 6, and 5x equals 3. Divide all of this by 5, 5, 5, 5. So I get my final answers of x equals negative 6 over 5, and x equals 3 over 5. Okay, we're going to go ahead and skip this one. We're going to talk about that in class on Thursday. Okay, let's go ahead and try one of these sample ones. All right, it says a rectangle has an area, so I know I have a rectangle that has an area. So that's the stuff inside of 4x squared minus 8x plus 3. Which of the following could represent the perimeter? So remember, to find area of a rectangle, it's length times width. So what we need to figure out, what those lengths and widths are by factoring this. So we're going to do our x method. Okay, a times c, so a is 4. C in this case is 3, so that's going to be 4 times 3, which is 12. Our b in this case is negative 8. So I need two numbers that multiply to get 12, but add to get negative 8. So that's going to be negative 6 and negative 2, because negative times negative makes a positive, but when I add them together, they'll add to make a negative. Okay, so we're going to take these, bring them down, make them denominators. Okay, our a in this case is 4, so we're going to put 4, and we're dealing with x, so we'll put 4x. And then we got to reduce each fraction if we can. Okay, this fraction, if I divide them by a 2, this is going to be 2x over negative 3. And this one, it's going to be 2x over negative 1. So my two factors are 2x minus 3 and 2x minus 1. It doesn't matter which one's with, so we know that one is 2x minus 3 and one's 2x minus 1. And it says for perimeter. So for perimeter, I also know that this is 2x minus 3, and I also know that this is 2x minus 1. We have to add them all together. So 2x plus 2x plus 2x plus 2x is going to give me 8x. And then minus 3 is negative 6, negative 7, negative 8. Your final answer would be D. Okay, and then the last one. It says Giovanni factors 16x squared minus 8x minus 3 equals 0 as u minus 3 times u plus 1 equals 0. Which of the following are solutions to his formula? So what he did is we know that u squared is going to be 16x squared. So he figured that out first. Then he took the square root of both of them to figure out what u is. So u is going to be, in this case, 4x. Okay, so we know what u is. So now that we have his factor of u minus 3 and u minus 1. Okay, it's going to both equal to 0. So add 3. So we know u is equal to 3. We also add 1. We know that u could also equal 1. But since we know u is 4x, we know 4x is going to equal 3, and 4x will also equal 1. Divide both sides by 4. So we know x is going to equal 3 over 4. Divide both sides by 4 over here. Could also equal 1 over 4, which means that 3 over 4 is our only answer choice that actually is in this problem. Okay, that's all we have for today. Go do a practice assignment.